She was a quiet girl, the kind who often walked through the halls of her school with her head slightly bowed, lost in her own thoughts. Her family noticed early on that she had a special connection with music. Even as a small child, she would hum tunes that she heard on the radio or in the street. There was something about the rhythm and the sound of notes that seemed to reach into her heart and stay there. While other children played outside or ran around with their friends, she found herself drawn to the old piano that had been sitting in her home for as long as she could remember. It was not a shiny new instrument. It had a few scratches, a slightly chipped key here and there, and the sound sometimes came out a little uneven. But to her, it was the most magical object in the world. The first time she touched the piano keys, she didn't know what to expect. She pressed one key, then another, and soon discovered that each key made a sound that was different from the one before. It was as if the piano were talking to her, and she could make it say anything she wanted. Her fingers moved slowly at first, unsure of themselves, but she felt a strange kind of happiness that she had never felt before. She wanted to play more and more, to learn how to make beautiful sounds, to create melodies that might tell stories without words. At school, things were different. Other children did not understand her fascination with the piano. They saw her sitting quietly, practicing her scales or humming softly to herself, and they thought it was strange. Sometimes they would laugh or whisper behind her back, "Why do you waste your time on that old thing?" One classmate would say, "You'll never be good at it," another would tease. Even though her heart sank when she heard these words, she tried not to show it. She knew that music made her happy, and that was more important than what anyone else thought. She began to sneak practice sessions whenever she could. If the house was empty, she would tiptoe to the piano and play for hours. The notes became her companions, the melodies her friends. Sometimes she would close her eyes and imagine an audience listening to her music, imagining their faces lighting up as they heard the sounds she could make. The thought made her smile quietly to herself. Despite the mockery she faced at school, she knew in her heart that this was something she had to do. Her parents were supportive, even if they did not fully understand the depth of her talent yet. They encouraged her to keep playing, to not let the teasing affect her. Occasionally, her mother would sit nearby, listening silently, nodding her head in approval as her fingers danced over the keys. Her father would bring home old music books from second-hand stores, thinking that even if she never became a professional musician, she was learning something valuable. The girl treasured these small gestures, and they gave her strength when the world outside seemed unkind. In school, the teasing continued. Some students would snicker when she carried her music books in her bag. Others would imitate her, pressing invisible keys on their desks and pretending to play, laughing at their own antics. At first, she felt the sting of these moments sharply. It hurt to be different, to be laughed at for something that brought her joy. But slowly, she learned to focus inward, to let the music she loved be louder than the words of those who did not understand. She realized that mockery was often a sign of jealousy or ignorance, and that gave her a small kind of courage. One afternoon, she discovered a small corner in the school where she could practice without being seen. The music room was usually locked, but a janitor had once told her that if she asked politely, she might be allowed in for a short while. She approached him shyly, her hands clutched around her music sheets, and asked if she could practice. The man looked at her for a moment and then nodded. "Just don't stay too long," he said, smiling. That tiny permission felt like a golden key to a new world. In that room, she could let the music flow freely, uninterrupted by whispers or laughter. The sound of her own notes bouncing off the walls gave her a sense of freedom she had never felt before. Over time, she began to notice small improvements in her playing. A scale that once tripped her up now felt easy. A tune that had sounded clumsy before now flowed smoothly. Each day she challenged herself a little more, learning new pieces from the old sheet music her father had found, or from lessons she could watch online when the internet allowed. The hours of practice, the quiet dedication, and the relentless curiosity were slowly shaping her into someone who could truly make the piano sing. Despite these small victories, the social challenges remained. There were days when the teasing felt unbearable, when the snickers and mocking faces seemed louder than her music. But she discovered a coping skill that helped her persevere. She would imagine that the piano was her world, a place where nobody could harm her, a space where her talent and passion were enough. When the words of others tried to penetrate her resolve, she would play louder, let her fingers fly over the keys, and drown out the noise with the sound of her own determination. Her friends at school were few, but there were a couple who supported her quietly. They would sometimes peek into the music room and smile when they saw her playing. "You're really good," one would whisper. These words were like water to a plant, nourishing her spirit and reminding her that the effort she put into her music mattered. Slowly, she realized that her world did not need to be large to be meaningful. The connections she made through music, the joy it brought her, and the small gestures of support from those who understood her were enough to keep her going. As months went by, her dedication began to show results. Her hands moved more confidently, her understanding of rhythm and melody deepened, and her ability to express emotion through her playing grew stronger. Even when she stumbled or made mistakes, she learned to keep going, to let the music flow instead of letting perfection become a barrier. Each note, each pause, each melody she created was a step forward on a journey that was uniquely hers. And yet, she still faced mockery. Sometimes it came in the form of laughter, sometimes in the form of rolling eyes or whispered insults, but she had learned to carry herself with quiet strength. Instead of shrinking from the ridicule, she let it fuel her determination. The more they laughed, the more she realized that her love for the piano was not something to be ashamed of. It was something to cherish and protect. Even at home, she experimented. She tried different techniques, explored unusual scales, and attempted compositions that reflected her feelings. Sometimes she would play a melody that seemed sad, other times one that was joyful or playful. Her parents watched in wonder as she translated her emotions into music, capturing moments of happiness, sadness, excitement, and longing with just her fingers and the keys of the piano. One evening, after a particularly long day at school filled with teasing, she sat down at the piano and began to play. She did not think about the laughter or the whispers from earlier. She let her hands move as they wished, letting the notes flow freely. The music swirled through the room, soft and gentle at first, then growing stronger and more confident. By the time she stopped, a quiet sense of pride filled her. She realized that the music was no longer just a hobby or a secret passion. It was becoming a part of who she was. Though the road ahead was still long, and the challenges outside the home remained, she knew that she had found something precious. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a refugee. And in that quiet space where the notes danced and the melodies soared, she discovered the first true taste of the courage and resilience that would one day allow her to amaze the world. Her journey had begun, and though she could not yet see the heights she would reach, she felt deep in her heart that the music was leading her somewhere extraordinary. After months of secret practice at home and in quiet corners of the school, her playing began to grow more confident. Each day she challenged herself to learn something new. Sometimes it was a difficult song from an old music book she had found, and other times it was a small melody that she created herself. Her fingers moved faster now, more naturally, as if the piano had become a part of her body. The connection between her mind, heart, and hands deepened, and with each note she felt a growing sense of possibility. She imagined what it would be like to play for a real audience, though the thought also made her nervous. The idea of performing in front of others brought memories of the teasing and mockery she had faced at school. The fear was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was now a challenge she wanted to overcome. One afternoon, she discovered an online video of a famous pianist playing a complex piece. She watched closely, fascinated by how the musician's hands moved with such fluidity and confidence. She tried to mimic the techniques, practicing for hours until her fingers ached. Her parents noticed the determination in her eyes and gently reminded her to rest, but she barely noticed. Each note she played, each melody she learned, gave her a sense of pride that nothing else could match. Slowly, she realized that the limits she once believed existed were only in her mind. With enough practice and dedication, she could achieve more than she had imagined. At school, the teasing continued, but she began to feel a growing sense of distance from it. When classmates whispered or laughed, she tried not to react. She had learned to protect her inner world, the space where music lived. In those moments, she would close her eyes and play imaginary melodies in her mind, letting the notes carry her away from the harsh words. She realized that while others could laugh at her, they could not take away her passion or her growing talent. This understanding brought a quiet strength she had never felt before. Her parents, seeing her dedication, decided to support her more actively. They found a music teacher who was willing to give her lessons once a week. The teacher was patient and kind, encouraging her to explore her creativity, while also teaching the fundamentals she needed to progress. The lessons became the highlight of her week. She looked forward to the moments when someone could guide her, correct her mistakes gently, and show her new techniques. The teacher saw the raw talent she possessed and often praised her progress, which filled her with confidence. Even with lessons and private practice, she still had to face the challenge of performing in front of others. One day, her teacher suggested that she play at a small community event. The girl's heart raced at the idea. The thought of being in front of a crowd was frightening, and memories of mockery and laughter filled her mind. But the teacher encouraged her, saying that everyone had to start somewhere. "Music is not just for you," the teacher said. "It can touch others too, and you have a gift that deserves to be heard." The words stayed with her, giving her courage she did not know she had. She began preparing for the event in secret, practicing the chosen piece every day. She focused on every detail, the tempo, the rhythm, the expression in each note. Sometimes she played for her parents, who clapped softly and praised her. Other times she practiced alone, imagining a crowd listening intently, imagining their surprise when they realized how skilled she had become. The hours of practice began to feel natural. Playing the piano was no longer just a pastime, but a part of her identity. Outside the home, life continued to be challenging. Some classmates were cruel in subtle ways, making jokes about her dedication to the piano. One day, a group of children deliberately knocked over her music books during recess, laughing as they scattered across the playground. Her stomach sank, but she did not cry or react with anger. Instead, she picked them up slowly, carefully, and returned to class, feeling a quiet determination growing inside her. The piano and the music were hers, and no one could take them away. At home, she started experimenting with composing her own pieces. She would hum a melody first, then try to capture it on the piano. Sometimes it sounded clumsy, other times it felt surprisingly beautiful. She began to record her music, listening back and critiquing herself. Each recording was a small step forward, a marker of progress. Her parents encouraged her creativity, sometimes suggesting ideas or clapping for the tunes they liked. These small acts of support made a big difference, reinforcing her belief that she was on the right path. As the community event approached, her nerves intensified. She found herself practicing late into the night, playing the same piece over and over. She imagined the audience, imagined the skeptical faces, and then imagined their surprise when they heard her music. The mixture of fear and excitement became almost unbearable at times. Yet she did not give up. She reminded herself that she had worked hard, that she had prepared, and that music was more than just notes on a page. It was a part of her soul. On the day of the event, she arrived early. The room was filled with people chatting and moving about. Some glanced at her curiously. Others did not notice her at all. She carried her music sheets in trembling hands but tried to maintain her composure. Backstage, she could hear the soft murmur of the crowd and the occasional laughter from someone making a joke. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if they laughed at her? What if she made a mistake? Then she remembered the quiet nights of practice, the hours spent learning new melodies, the small victories she had achieved alone. She remembered her teacher's words about sharing her gift, her parents' quiet encouragement, and the imaginary audiences she had played for in her mind. Taking a deep breath, she approached the piano, sitting down and opening the music sheet. The first note she pressed was careful, measured, but steady. She felt the keys respond under her fingers, and something inside her shifted. She was ready. As she played, she focused on the music rather than the audience. Each note carried her emotions, her fear, her hope, her determination, and her joy. Slowly, she began to lose herself in the melody, letting her fingers move with confidence and grace. The sound filled the room, weaving through the chatter and creating a quiet, almost magical atmosphere. Some people paused and looked up, noticing the music for the first time. The piece grew more complex and expressive with each passing moment, and the girl's focus deepened. In that instant, she was not a shy, mocked child. She was a musician, fully present in the moment, sharing her gift with the world. By the time she finished, there was a stunned silence. The audience did not move, did not clap, simply absorbed the music they had just heard. She looked up, her heart pounding, unsure how they would react. Then slowly applause began to rise. People clapped with surprise and admiration, some even standing up. Faces that had once been skeptical or amused now showed respect. She felt a rush of relief and pride unlike anything she had experienced before. For the first time, she realized that her hard work and dedication had created something powerful, something that could touch others and command attention. After the performance, her teacher came to her with a proud smile. "You did it," they said softly. "You shared your music and it moved people. That is the magic of what you can do." Her parents hugged her tightly, whispering words of love and pride. Even some classmates who had teased her looked on with a new kind of respect, unsure of what to say but clearly impressed. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a combination of joy, relief, and a growing belief in herself. That evening, when she returned home, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the lonely afternoons of secret practice, the teasing at school, the doubts she had battled, and the hours spent learning and improving. She realized that all of it had shaped her into the person who could sit at the piano and create music that resonated with others. The struggles had been difficult, but they had also been necessary. Without them, she might never have discovered the depth of her own strength and talent. She sat at the piano once more, not to practice, but to play for herself. The notes flowed easily, confidently, and she smiled as she played. The music was no longer just a private passion or a secret talent. It was a bridge between her inner world and the world outside. She knew that challenges would continue to come, that mockery might return in some form, but she also knew that she had found something that could never be taken away. Her love for the piano, her dedication to her craft, and her growing skill were now parts of her identity that would guide her forward. And as she played into the quiet night, she felt a sense of hope and excitement for all the music yet to come. As she continued to grow in her musical journey, the girl started to notice that her confidence at the piano was increasing, but performing in front of people still made her heart race. The experience at the community event had been thrilling, but it had also reminded her that the world outside her practice space could be intimidating. Despite this, she felt a spark inside her, a desire to challenge herself further to see what she was truly capable of. Each day she spent hours at the piano, practicing new pieces and experimenting with her own melodies. Her dedication was unwavering, and she began to dream of larger performances, perhaps even in front of a full audience someday. At school, the teasing and whispers had not disappeared entirely. Some classmates still laughed quietly when they saw her carrying her music sheets, while others whispered behind her back, questioning why she spent so much time on the piano. But the girl had changed. She no longer felt the sting of their words as sharply as before. She had found an inner strength, a quiet determination that allowed her to focus on her music instead of the judgment of others. In her mind, she imagined herself playing for audiences who would appreciate her talent, and that vision gave her courage. Her music teacher noticed her growing skill and suggested that she consider joining a local music competition. The idea both excited and terrified her. She had never imagined performing on such a stage. The thought of a crowd of strangers watching her every move made her palms sweat and her stomach twist. But at the same time, the challenge ignited something inside her. She knew that this was an opportunity to show the world what she could do and, more importantly, to prove to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. She agreed to participate in the competition and began preparing in earnest. Every day after school, she would practice for hours, refining her technique, mastering difficult passages, and perfecting the expression in her playing. She focused on every detail, from the pressure of her fingers on the keys to the timing of each pause. Her parents supported her fully, offering encouragement, helping her manage her practice schedule, and listening to her play whenever she needed feedback. The piano had become the center of her world, and she embraced the challenge with a seriousness and dedication that surprised even herself. Despite the excitement, doubts crept in frequently. She wondered if she was truly ready, if her skills were enough to impress the judges, and if the audience would appreciate her music. The fear of failure was strong, but she reminded herself of all the progress she had made, of the hours spent practicing in secret, and of the moments when her music had already moved people. She realized that fear was a natural part of growth, and that she could channel it into focus and determination rather than letting it stop her. The day of the competition arrived. She entered the venue carrying her music sheets and feeling the familiar flutter of nerves. The room was filled with young musicians, each with their own instruments and their own dreams. Some looked confident and experienced, while others, like her, seemed nervous and uncertain. She found a quiet corner and took a deep breath, reminding herself of all the practice and preparation that had brought her to this moment. She closed her eyes briefly, letting herself imagine the music flowing through her fingers effortlessly, and then approached the piano. As she sat down and placed her hands on the keys, she felt the weight of the moment. The audience was quiet, waiting expectantly, and the judges watched intently. For a moment she hesitated, her heart pounding, but then she remembered the countless hours she had spent practicing, the encouragement from her parents and teacher, and the small victories that had built her confidence. She took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes were soft and tentative, but as she continued, she felt the music taking over. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, expressing the emotions she had poured into her practice. Each melody, each chord carried her feelings into the room, and she felt a connection with the audience even though she could not see their faces clearly. The music became a bridge, allowing her to communicate without words, to share a part of herself that had been hidden away for so long. As the piece progressed, she noticed subtle changes in the audience. Some people leaned forward, captivated by the skill and emotion in her playing. Others looked surprised, their expressions shifting from doubt to admiration. She realized that her music was speaking to them, breaking through the walls of skepticism and expectation. The nervousness that had plagued her moments before began to fade, replaced by a sense of flow and confidence. In that moment, she was not just performing. She was expressing herself fully, sharing her heart through the piano. When she finished, there was a brief silence, as if the room itself was absorbing the final notes. Then applause began to rise, growing louder and louder until it filled the entire hall. The girl felt a rush of joy and relief, her chest swelling with pride. She had done it. She had faced her fears, shared her music, and captivated an audience. For the first time, she truly understood the power of her dedication and talent. The applause was not just for the notes she played, but for the courage and determination that had brought her to that stage. After the performance, the judges offered praise and constructive feedback. They acknowledged her skill, her expression, and the emotional depth of her playing. They encouraged her to continue pursuing music, noting that she had a rare ability to connect with listeners. Her parents hugged her tightly, tears of pride in their eyes. Even some classmates who had previously mocked her approached cautiously, offering congratulations and expressing surprise at her talent. The girl smiled quietly, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and determination to continue improving. In the weeks that followed, her reputation at school began to change. While not everyone became supportive immediately, the whispers of mockery were replaced by curiosity and respect. Some students asked to hear her play, others complimented her in passing, and a few even admitted they had underestimated her. She learned that recognition did not always come instantly, and that patience and consistent effort were often more powerful than immediate approval. The experience reinforced her belief that her music was meaningful and that sharing it, even in the face of doubt and criticism, was worth every challenge. The competition experience also sparked a new level of ambition. She began to set goals for herself, imagining larger performances, more complex pieces, and the possibility of inspiring others through her music. She continued to compose her own melodies, exploring new styles and experimenting with emotion and technique. Each day brought new discoveries and opportunities for growth. She found herself thinking not just about playing the piano, but about how her music could touch others, how it could tell stories, and how it could convey feelings that words sometimes could not. At home, she maintained her rigorous practice routine. The piano had become a trusted companion, a source of comfort, inspiration, and joy. Her parents continued to support her, offering encouragement, helping with logistics for performances, and simply listening when she needed to share her excitement or frustrations. The relationship between the girl and the piano grew deeper, rooted in both skill and emotion. Each note she played became a reflection of her journey, a testament to the resilience and determination that had brought her this far. As the months passed, she began to notice her own growth in unexpected ways. She felt more confident in social situations, more willing to take risks, and more capable of handling challenges without fear. The lessons learned through music, patience, focus, perseverance, and emotional expression began to influence other areas of her life. She realized that her journey as a pianist was not just about performing or mastering techniques. It was about discovering herself and learning how to navigate the world with courage and authenticity. One evening, while practicing a particularly challenging piece she had composed herself, she paused and reflected on how far she had come. From the shy, timid girl who had once been mocked for her love of music, she had grown into a confident young musician, capable of captivating audiences and expressing her deepest emotions through her playing. She smiled quietly, feeling a mixture of pride and gratitude. The journey was far from over, but she knew that each step, each note, and each moment of practice had brought her closer to realizing her potential. She continued to play late into the night, experimenting with melodies, exploring new harmonies, and allowing her creativity to flow freely. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a part of her identity, a channel through which she could communicate her thoughts and feelings. And as the music filled the quiet room, she felt a sense of peace and purpose that she had never known before. The journey was challenging, the path sometimes uncertain, but she had discovered a passion that could never be diminished and a talent that could one day inspire others, just as she had once been inspired by the music she loved. After the competition, her confidence grew steadily. She felt a quiet pride in herself, not just for winning applause, but for having faced her fears and performed with sincerity. The experience had shown her that dedication and practice could turn nervousness into strength. She began to think about her music not just as a personal pursuit, but as something that could inspire others. Every day she approached the piano with a sense of purpose, eager to explore new melodies, experiment with emotion, and refine her technique. Her playing became more expressive and nuanced, reflecting not only her skill but also her personality and depth of feeling. At school, attitudes toward her began to change. Some of the classmates who had mocked her previously started to observe her quietly, curious about the talent they had dismissed. A few approached her cautiously, asking to hear her play or seeking advice on how to improve their own skills. While she was polite and kind, she had grown wiser and understood that her journey was personal. She shared her music carefully on her own terms. The teasing that once weighed heavily on her spirit had become a distant echo, replaced by a growing sense of self-respect and empowerment. She realized that she could not control how others behaved, but she could control how she responded, and that knowledge gave her freedom. Her teacher continued to guide her, introducing more advanced techniques and challenging her with complex compositions. These lessons pushed her to her limits, sometimes leaving her frustrated or exhausted. Yet, with each challenge, she discovered a new layer of capability within herself. She learned to approach difficult pieces patiently, breaking them down into manageable sections and mastering each one before moving on. She discovered that mistakes were not failures, but opportunities to learn and improve. This mindset extended beyond music, influencing the way she approached other areas of life, from schoolwork to personal goals. Her parents remained her steadfast supporters. They attended every small recital, every informal performance at the community center, and provided encouragement without pressure. They listened to her practice sessions, offered constructive suggestions when she asked, and celebrated every milestone, no matter how minor. Their quiet support created a foundation of stability that allowed her to take risks and grow without fear of failure. She cherished their presence and guidance, knowing that her achievements were not just her own, but also a reflection of the love and support she had received at home. As her skill improved, so did her creativity. She began composing longer and more intricate pieces, blending classical techniques with her own unique style. Her music started to carry stories and emotions that words could not fully express. Each composition reflected her experiences, her dreams, and the challenges she had overcome. She experimented with dynamics, tempo, and mood, learning how to evoke specific feelings in her listeners. The process of creating music became as important to her as performing it, and she spent hours refining her compositions, sometimes playing them repeatedly until they sounded exactly as she envisioned. Her growing abilities did not go unnoticed in the wider community. Local music teachers and performers began to invite her to small events and recitals. Each opportunity brought new experiences and challenges. Performing in front of different audiences helped her understand the importance of presence, expression, and connecting emotionally with listeners. She learned to manage nerves, focus on the music, and let the audience feel the story she was telling through her playing. Each performance reinforced her love for the piano and strengthened her confidence, showing her that she could face any challenge if she remained dedicated and passionate. Despite the increasing recognition, she remained humble. She knew that talent alone was not enough. Consistent practice, discipline, and the desire to improve were equally important. She continued to dedicate hours each day to her music, even when the results were not immediately apparent. There were times when she struggled with difficult pieces, when frustration threatened to overwhelm her, but she remembered her past challenges and the satisfaction of overcoming them. She approached every obstacle with patience and determination, understanding that growth was a gradual process that required effort and perseverance. One day, her music teacher suggested that she record her compositions and share them online. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety at the idea. Releasing her music to a wider audience meant exposing herself to judgment, both positive and negative. But after thinking about the joy her music could bring to others, she agreed. She carefully recorded her pieces, paying attention to every detail, and shared them on a platform where music enthusiasts could listen. The response was encouraging. Listeners praised her technical skill, the emotional depth of her playing, and her creativity. Messages of support and admiration poured in, and she realized that her music could reach beyond her immediate surroundings, touching lives she had never imagined. With this newfound visibility, invitations to perform at larger events began to arrive. She was asked to play at local festivals, school events, and small concerts. Each performance was an opportunity to grow, to face new audiences, and to express herself in ways she had never attempted before. The initial fear she had felt gradually transformed into excitement and anticipation. She learned to embrace the challenge, understanding that each stage was a chance to connect with people through her music and to inspire them with the passion she carried. The people who had once mocked her started to change their perspective as well. Some apologized for their earlier behavior, expressing surprise and admiration for the talent they had dismissed. Others remained quiet, observing from a distance, but the girl no longer sought validation from them. She understood that true recognition came from consistent effort, self-belief, and the impact she could have through her music. The past mockery became a reminder of her resilience and a testament to how far she had come. Her parents noticed the transformation in her beyond music. She became more confident in social interactions, more willing to take initiative, and more comfortable expressing her thoughts and feelings. The lessons learned through her dedication to the piano, patience, focus, perseverance, and emotional expression, had influenced other areas of her life. She approached challenges with a thoughtful mindset, understanding that effort and dedication were key to success. Her journey through music had become a metaphor for life itself, teaching her resilience, courage, and the importance of staying true to herself. In quiet moments at home, she reflected on her journey. From the shy, mocked child who had practiced in secret to the confident young musician performing on stages, she had grown in ways she had never imagined. She felt gratitude for her parents, her teacher, and the people who had supported her along the way. She also felt pride in herself for persevering through doubt, fear, and criticism. Each note she played was a reminder of her journey, a testament to her dedication, and a reflection of her growth. The piano became not just an instrument, but a companion, a confidant, and a medium through which she could explore the world and herself. The hours spent practicing, composing, and performing had shaped her identity and provided her with a sense of purpose. Music had become a bridge, connecting her inner world with the lives of others, allowing her to communicate in ways that words alone could not. She understood that the path ahead would still have challenges, but she felt prepared, equipped with the skills, discipline, and confidence she had cultivated. One evening, after a long day of practice and composing, she sat at the piano and played a piece she had written herself. The music flowed effortlessly, filled with emotion, depth, and confidence. As she played, she imagined the faces of listeners, the people she hoped to inspire, and the emotions she wished to convey. The room seemed to fade away, leaving only the piano and the music, and in that moment she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had found her voice, her strength, and her place in the world through her dedication to the piano. She knew that there were still greater stages to play on, more complex compositions to master, and new challenges to face. But she also understood that the journey itself was a vital part of her growth. Every practice session, every performance, every composition added to her experience. shaping her into a musician who could inspire, connect, and communicate through the universal language of music. And as she played into the quiet night, she felt a deep sense of purpose and joy, knowing that her music could touch lives and that her journey was far from over. As she continued to grow as a musician, she began to realize that her journey was no longer just about mastering the piano or impressing others with her skill. It had become a story of resilience, courage, and personal growth. She had faced mockery, self-doubt, and countless challenges, but through music she had discovered her strength and her voice. Each performance, each composition, each hour spent practicing was a testament to her dedication and passion. She knew that the path ahead would continue to test her, but she felt ready, confident in her ability to rise to any challenge. Word of her talent spread beyond her school and local community. Invitations arrived to perform at larger venues, including music festivals, charity events, and even regional competitions. Each opportunity brought its own excitement and nervousness. The girl felt the familiar flutter of nerves before every performance, but she had learned to channel that energy into focus and expression. She approached each stage with the understanding that music was not just a technical skill, but a means to communicate emotions and stories that words alone could not convey. She continued to compose her own pieces, experimenting with different styles and emotions. Some pieces were joyful and playful, others somber and reflective, and some told stories of triumph over struggle. Through her music, she expressed the depth of her experiences, the challenges she had overcome, and the hope she carried for the future. She realized that her compositions were more than just melodies. They were extensions of herself, a way to share her journey and inspire others. Her parents remained her unwavering support system. They attended every performance, listened to her practice, and offered gentle guidance when needed. Their encouragement was a constant source of strength, reminding her that her efforts were valued and appreciated. At home, the piano had become a sacred space where she could explore her creativity, reflect on her experiences, and find comfort in the music she loved. She understood that her growth as a musician was deeply intertwined with the support she received from her family. At school, the perception of her peers had shifted dramatically. Those who had once mocked her now approached her with curiosity and admiration. Some asked to hear her play, while others offered sincere congratulations on her accomplishments. The change in attitude was a reminder that perseverance and dedication often speak louder than words. She had learned to value her own judgment above that of others, understanding that self-belief was more important than approval from anyone else. One day, she received an invitation to perform at a prominent local event, a stage larger than any she had played on before. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She knew that this performance could open doors to even greater opportunities, but the pressure felt immense. Her hands trembled as she prepared, and her heart raced with anticipation. Yet she also felt a quiet confidence. She had faced challenges before, conquered fears, and poured her heart into countless performances. She knew that her dedication and preparation had equipped her to rise to this occasion. The day of the performance arrived. The venue was filled with an audience eager to hear talented musicians from the region. As she stepped onto the stage and approached the piano, she felt a mixture of excitement, nerves, and determination. The bright lights and the expectant faces could have been intimidating, but she focused on the music, letting it guide her. She took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. The first notes filled the room, soft and precise, gradually building into a melody that carried emotion and expression. She poured herself into the music, letting her feelings flow through each note. The audience listened intently, captivated by the depth and skill of her playing. Some leaned forward, their eyes wide with admiration, while others closed their eyes, allowing the music to speak directly to their hearts. For the first time, she felt completely connected to the audience, aware of the impact her music could have on others. As the performance continued, her confidence grew. She moved seamlessly through complex passages, her fingers dancing across the keys with precision and grace. Each chord, each melody carried a piece of her journey. The struggles she had overcome, the dedication she had poured into her practice, and the joy she found in expressing herself through music. The audience responded with a mixture of awe and appreciation, and she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The music was no longer just a personal passion. It had become a bridge connecting her with others. When the final note faded, the room erupted in applause. The audience stood clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. She felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her, a recognition not only of her skill but of the dedication and perseverance that had brought her to this moment. Her parents hugged her tightly, their eyes filled with pride and joy. Her teacher approached, smiling broadly, and praised her for the emotion and confidence she had conveyed. Even some peers who had once doubted her now looked on with respect and admiration. The success of the performance marked a turning point in her journey. She realized that her music could inspire, move, and touch people in ways she had never imagined. She understood that the hours of practice, the moments of doubt, and the challenges she had faced were all part of a larger purpose. Her journey was not just about personal achievement, but about sharing her passion and connecting with others through the universal language of music. In the weeks and months that followed, she continued to perform at various events, each experience adding to her growth as a musician and a person. She received invitations to collaborate with other artists, teach younger students, and participate in larger musical projects. Her compositions gained recognition, and she felt a sense of pride in creating music that resonated with others. Through it all, she remained humble, understanding that true mastery required continuous effort, learning, and dedication. She also took time to reflect on the challenges she had faced early in her journey. The mockery, the doubt, and the loneliness she had experienced had shaped her into a stronger, more resilient person. She understood that her perseverance had not only strengthened her musical abilities, but had also taught her valuable life lessons: courage, patience, and the importance of believing in herself. She felt gratitude for the support of her parents, her teacher, and the few friends who had encouraged her along the way. Her journey inspired others as well. Younger students who once felt different or discouraged by criticism began to see her as a role model. They realized that dedication, passion, and self-belief could overcome ridicule and challenges. She shared her experiences openly, encouraging them to pursue their interests, embrace their talents, and never let fear or judgment hold them back. Her story became a source of motivation, showing that perseverance and commitment could lead to success and personal fulfillment. At home, the piano remained a central part of her life. It was a place of comfort, creativity, and reflection. She continued to compose, practice, and explore new musical ideas. Each day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new discoveries. She understood that her journey was ongoing, and that growth as a musician and as a person was a continuous process. The piano had become a partner in her journey, a tool through which she could explore her potential and express her inner world. As she looked back on her path, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. From the shy girl who had been mocked for her love of music to the confident young musician who inspired others, she had grown in ways that went far beyond technical skill. She had learned resilience, courage, and the power of dedication. She had discovered her voice, her identity, and her ability to connect with others through the beauty of music. The story of her journey was far from over. She knew there would be more challenges, more performances, and more opportunities to grow. But she also knew that she had the strength, passion, and determination to face whatever lay ahead. Music had become her life, her expression, and her purpose. And as she played, whether in front of an audience or in the quiet of her home, she felt the joy and fulfillment of pursuing a path that was uniquely hers. The girl who had once been mocked for playing the piano had not only mastered her craft but had also discovered the courage to be herself and the power to inspire others through her music.